Hi, boys and girls. We're going to be talking about shapes this week. And so you can see here on the video that this is our shape sheet that we gave you back when we started geometry. And I went ahead and helped you out a little bit and divided it up into sections, and I color coded it to kind of help you. So remember when we started out, we were talking about lines, and lines are things that have two arrowheads. And then connected to that is a line segment, which has end points. So remember, a line goes in two directions, and line segment is just part of a line. Then we have array. Remember, array just goes in one direction, so it has one arrowhead. Then we talked about angles. So here in green, we can see an acute angle. I labeled it with a little a because it's less than 90 degrees. Remember, you can take a note card and put it in the corner, and if it's hiding behind the note card, then it's an acute angle. We also learned about a right angle. A right angle has this little box in the corner. Your note card fits right in there perfectly, lines up, is 90 degrees. This is something you need to memorize, 90 degrees. After that, we have an obtuse angle, obtuse. I coded that in purple. And remember, an obtuse angle is your big wide angle. It's greater than 90 degrees, but less than 180. Now there is one angle that's missing, and that's the straight angle. And remember, it looks like the line. It's just a straight line, and it's 180 degrees. A straight angle is 180 degrees. We also talked about parallel lines. I coded those in orange. I'm sorry, obtuse angle is pink. I just saw my purple over here, sorry. So parallel lines are orange. And remember, in parallel, we see two parallel lines, two lines that never cross. Then we talked about perpendicular lines. And these lines I've marked in purple, and notice the yellow right angle. Again, they intersect at 90 degrees. They're very, very special. 90 degrees, very special. One of my favorite geometry words too. And we also just can have intersecting lines, which are just two lines that cross. So after we talked about lines and angles, we talked about triangles. And this year in fourth grade, you just have to know that you have acute triangles. That's these first three right here that have all acute angles. Notice all of the little green angles. Okay, so they're all very small. Now, just to get you ready going up into middle school, this first acute triangle here is got all equal sides, so it's called equilateral. And this next triangle right here is also an acute triangle because all of the angles are acute, but it only has two equal sides, so it's called an isosceles. Finally, we have this last acute triangle, and it just looks kind of bizarre and strange and a little stretched out and weird, and he's called a scalene, and that's because he has no equal sides. We also learned that we could have a right triangle. This is a triangle that has a right angle, a pair of perpendicular sides, and two acute angles. And finally, we can have an obtuse triangle. Remember, this is two acute angles and one obtuse, big wide angle there to make it an obtuse triangle. Remember, tri means three. So all triangles, three sides, three angles. Now we come to my favorite group, and my students know all about this group. This Miss Griffith and her kids know all about the quadrilaterals because Miss Griffith loves her quadrilaterals. So the bestest quadrilateral ever is the square, and he has four equal sides, as you can see here. He has four right angles, and as soon as he has right angles, that means he also has perpendicular sides, but he also has parallel. His opposite sides are parallel. Now, closely related to the square is the rectangle. A rectangle also has 4 right angles, which also means he has perpendicular sides. He has opposite sides are parallel, and opposite sides are congruent, are equal. Okay? So a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. Moving along here, we have the parallelogram. This looks a lot like a rectangle, except it's leaning. Look at its angles. It's exactly like the rectangle, except it's leaning. Its angles are not 90 degrees. It has 2 obtuse and 2 acute. Opposite sides are equal and parallel. Next is the rhombus. Rhombus. This one is like the square, except again, instead of having the 90-degree angles, we have 2 acute and 2 obtuse angles. All of the sides are equal to each other, and opposite sides are parallel. The last kind of quadrilateral or 4-sided figure you might find is the trapezoids. There are 2 kinds of trapezoids. This first one, where you can see my arrow, is an isosceles trapezoid because this side and this side are equal. The trapezoid is different from the other guys in that it only has 1 pair of parallel sides. The isosceles trapezoid has 2 obtuse and 2 acute angles. Probably my most favorite shape of all is the right trapezoid. And the right trapezoid has 1 pair of parallel sides. It has right angles, which means it also has perpendicular. It has 1 obtuse and 1 acute. So those are your quadrilaterals or your 4-sided figures. Now we have a few more shapes down here at the bottom. We have a pentagon that has 5 sides, a hexagon that has 6, an octagon that has 8, and a decagon that has 10. All of these 4 shapes are polygons because they are closed and have straight sides. They are regular because they have equal sides and equal angles. You can have an irregular shape that has 5 sides. It's still a pentagon. That's your house shape, but it's not regular. And finally, in his own little special box is our circle because he's not a polygon, and you're going to learn more about him in 6th grade. He has a lot of very special characteristics. He's very cool. All right, so there's a quick review of the shapes. Okay, this is also on your slide as a picture so that you can go back and look at that if you need to. Now, I want to include one other picture, and it's this one. I put this on the slideshow as well, and this just goes through really quickly. I'm going to try and make it a touch bigger so you guys can see here a little bit better. Okay. So you have polygons, which are closed shapes, straight sides. And notice these could be anything. Here's a pentagon, a triangle, a rhombus, a trapezoid, a square, all these things. Then we have quadrilaterals, 4 sides. And here's some. Notice here are the trapezoids. They're off by themselves. They have exactly 1 set of parallel sides. Still inside the quadrilateral circle, we have parallelograms, which are 2 sets of parallel sides. And notice here's our leany, kind of, leaned over rectangle and leaned over square. But notice right down here, inside this also includes the rectangles, squares, and rhombuses, or rhombi. And so a parallelogram that has all congruent sides is a rhombus. A parallelogram that has all right angles becomes a rectangle. Rec right there in the front means right. And if you're a rectangle and a rhombus, that is, if you have all right angles and all equal sides, you get to become a square, who is the bestest quadrilateral ever. Now, I don't know about the other classes. I don't know if Mrs. Young and Mrs. Sugg and Miss Paulman and Miss Kessinger or Miss Finley, did I leave anybody out? Mrs. Sugg, Mrs. Young, Mrs. Finley, Mrs. Paulman, and Mrs. Kessinger. I don't know if they taught this particular image, but my students will recognize the quadrilateral staircase. And it's just kind of show you another way to look at the quadrilaterals. At the bottom of the pile is anything that has 4 sides. Then you have the trapezoids who are under the staircase because they're kind of in a trap, only having 1 pair of parallel sides. And then you have all the quadrilaterals that have 2 pairs of parallel sides, which is the parallelogram. And then if you have 4 right angles, you become a rectangle. If you have all equal sides, you're a rhombus. And if you're a rectangle and a rhombus, you get to become a square at the top of the staircase. So, guys, I hope this helped you remember a little bit about geometry. It's very important that you know what the shapes look like, that you can find the kinds of angles. Remember how to use your note card to do that. Maybe if you need help doing that, that might be a good time to tune in to one of the Zoom office hours and ask the math teacher that's there if they could go over how to use a note card to measure angles if you don't remember how to do it. So I hope you guys remember your geometry and have fun with this easy geometry assignment this week. All right?